Make discipline. Feel easy. Most people believe discipline belongs to rare personalities, the kind of people who wake before sunrise without hesitation, train without excuses, finish difficult work without distraction, and move through life with permanent self-control. From a distance, disciplined people look almost mechanical, as if they were born with a stronger mind and a quieter emotional world. That belief feels convincing because inconsistency often feels deeply personal. When goals remain unfinished, people quietly assume something inside them must be weaker than it should be. But the truth is less dramatic and far more hopeful. Most people do not fail because they lack ambition. They fail because their environment, habits, and internal signals constantly make the wrong choice feel easier than the right one. The human brain was never designed to admire effort for its own sake. It was designed to conserve energy, reduce uncertainty, and repeat what feels familiar enough to avoid unnecessary strain. That means every time a difficult task appears, the brain quietly measures discomfort before meaning. If effort feels too immediate and reward feels too distant, hesitation appears automatically. That hesitation is often mistaken for laziness, when in reality, it is simply untrained friction responding exactly as biology predicts. This is why forcing discipline usually fails when the system underneath daily life remains unchanged. People make dramatic promises late at night, create large plans, imagine a new version of themselves, then wake up inside the same room, the same distractions, the same routines, and the same invisible patterns that shaped yesterday. Motivation feels powerful in imagination because imagination contains no friction. Real life introduces friction immediately. The wiser path is not force, it is design. A person who consistently follows through usually has fewer hidden obstacles between intention and action. The alarm is placed where standing becomes necessary. The phone stays away from the bed. The desk is prepared before fatigue arrives. Water is already visible. Shoes are already waiting. The first step has already been made easier before discipline is required. That is why disciplined people often look calm rather than heroic. They are not fighting themselves every hour. They are removing negotiations before the day begins. The brain follows friction with remarkable obedience. Increase friction for distractions and distractions weaken. Decrease friction for growth and progress becomes more likely. If unhealthy food is immediate, while healthy choices require effort, comfort wins repeatedly. If the phone remains within reach while work begins, attention fragments before momentum forms. If learning requires searching, organizing, and deciding every time, avoidance quietly becomes easier than beginning. Small environmental changes often outperform large emotional promises because the brain responds faster to convenience than to intention. This is why tiny beginnings matter so much. A person who promises 50 difficult actions usually stops early because the beginning already feels expensive. A person who commits to one small action often continues because beginning created motion instead of resistance. One page read, one paragraph written, one push-up, 1 minute of focused work. The brain resists large identity threats, but often accepts small openings. Once movement begins, resistance often weakens because the hardest part of discipline is rarely continuation. It is the emotional weight attached to starting. Visible progress also matters more than people realize. The mind responds strongly to proof that effort is creating shape. A check mark, a completed line, a visible streak, a filled calendar square, a finished page, a marked workout. All of these create evidence that today mattered. Evidence changes motivation because effort stops feeling invisible. This is why many highly disciplined people use simple systems that appear almost childish to outsiders. Lists, trackers, repeating patterns, scheduled blocks, and visible markers are not signs of weakness. They are neurological reinforcement tools. The brain trusts repeated evidence more than vague intention. Consistency also becomes easier when identity changes. At first, people often say they are trying to become disciplined. That language keeps discipline outside identity, as if it belongs to another version of the self that has not arrived yet. But after repeated action, identity begins shifting quietly. A person stops saying they are trying to write and begins thinking of themselves as someone who writes. They stop saying they are trying to exercise and begin recognizing that movement is simply what they do. That shift matters because identity reduces negotiation. When action becomes part of self-description, less energy is spent debating whether to begin. Perfection, however, destroys this process faster than failure itself. Many people break momentum not because they missed once, but because they interpreted one missed day as proof the pattern collapsed. A missed workout becomes emotional disappointment. A missed morning becomes a reason to postpone again. But discipline survives best when mistakes are treated lightly and recovery begins quickly. Missing once changes nothing. Repeating avoidance while emotionally dramatizing one mistake creates damage. This is why forgiving interruption matters. Calm restarting protects momentum better than harsh self-criticism ever will. Internal dialogue quietly shapes discipline every day. A harsh inner voice often sounds useful because it appears demanding, but harshness usually drains consistency over time. Encouragement creates longer endurance because the nervous system performs better under clarity than under shame. A disciplined mind is not constantly shouting commands. It usually sounds calm, direct, and practical. Another powerful principle is habit attachment. New habits survive better when attached to routines already happening automatically. After coffee, write one paragraph. After brushing teeth, stretch. After work, read 5 pages. The brain accepts these patterns more easily because they borrow stability from habits already rooted in daily rhythm. This reduces emotional cost because you are not building behavior from empty space. You are inserting growth into existing movement. Discipline becomes strongest when it no longer feels like punishment. At that stage, action starts carrying less resistance because repetition has made it familiar. What once felt difficult becomes ordinary. That is why the most impressive transformations often look quiet while the foyers are happening. No dramatic moment announces them. No external applause appears daily. A person simply repeats small choices until results become visible enough that outsiders suddenly call the change extraordinary. But extraordinary outcomes are usually built through ordinary repetitions, protected long enough to compound. The person who writes 1 page daily eventually holds a finished body of work. The person who trains briefly but consistently develops visible strength. The person who studies calmly every day eventually speaks with authority others assume arrived naturally. Motivation often receives too much respect because it feels exciting. Discipline matters more because it remains available when excitement disappears. The goal is not becoming someone who feels ready every day. The goal is becoming someone who begins even when readiness is absent. That is where design wins. Make beginnings smaller. Make progress visible. Make distractions harder. Make recovery quick. Make identity stronger than mood. And slowly, discipline stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like normal movement through the day. When that happens, consistency becomes less dramatic and far more powerful because the mind stops seeing growth as interruption and begins recognizing it as part of who you already are. If this changed how you see discipline, subscribe now, watch the next video. And if you are serious about building real consistency, click the link below and get yours now.